want to take a moment and talk about my journey with having an epileptic dog. I'm making this video to hopefully help other dog parents who are either experiencing seizures in their dogs or just got the diagnosis that their dog has epilepsy. First, let me just say that Koi is on medication. He's on Keppra. He takes 2 pills every 12 hours. It's the time release version. I'm not sure what would have happened if we wouldn't have started the pills. The first time Koi most likely had a seizure, I didn't see it, and I also didn't know what it was. And still to this day, we don't know if it was a seizure, but it seemed like he had gotten sprayed by a skunk or a cat. He just smelled bad. I think what had happened is he had pissed himself. He had drool all over him. It was a June day, so it was like kind of hot. Went to the vet, all of his blood work was normal, everything was normal. So I just gave him a bath and didn't think about it. And he didn't have another seizure until like 3 months later. Once he had the other seizure, I saw that one. It was very clear it was a seizure. Luckily for me, I had experience with a dog that had epilepsy before. It wasn't my dog. Unfortunately for me, is my experience with that dog was that epilepsy kills dogs and they don't live past 4 years old. This dog had grand mal seizures. I was with her for the first one she ever had, and I was by myself. The owner wasn't around, and it was terrifying. I didn't know what was going on. Rushed her to the vet. They asked us all the questions. Did she get into anything? All of her blood work was normal. Honestly, I don't know if that vet was the best vet because right away they put her on 2 medications. She was only about 1.5 years old, so she got put on Keppra, which is what my dog is on, and that was every 8 hours, so it was a different version. And then she was put on another one also. I'm not sure if that cocktail was just too much for her to start off with 2 medications. I also don't think her owner always did a really good job at giving it to her on time. She ultimately died from going into epileptic shock and having seizures, which is super sad. So when Koi got his diagnosis, I thought it was a death sentence. He was almost 2 years old. I contacted his breeder, which I thought was the right thing to do in the moment. And so many people ask me all the time, like, what's the breeder information? And I can't tell you because I've chosen to talk openly about his epilepsy and my experience with it. And when you buy a puppy from some breeders, they make you sign something that says you won't slander them at all. So it's a contract I signed, and it's not worth me getting sued because apparently me talking about the epilepsy is slander. They still believe it was caused from flea and tick medication, even though there's 3 of his other relatives that have reached out to me that also have epilepsy. One is a half-sister. One is like technically an uncle of Koi's. I don't want you to be worried like that if you get a solid brown dog, that means it's related to Koi and it might have epilepsy. Not every solid red dog is related to Koi. There's a lot of other breeders out there. So I don't want to worry anybody. And I do get messages from people that adopt a red husky from a shelter or something and it looks like Koi and they think, oh my God, like what if our dogs are related? What if my dog has epilepsy? Don't worry about that. That's a little bit of the background. So Koi had possibly a seizure in June. He had one in September, and I started him on CBD. I was like, I'm gonna do this naturally. I started looking into all the natural things you could do, and CBD seemed to be the most common thing. Some dogs have a genetic trait in them, and you'll have to do your own research on this, but some dogs, CBD actually makes their seizures worse. I haven't done the genetic testing on Koi to know if he has the gene. I just stopped giving him CBD when I started the meds because in November he had a seizure and then within 1 week he had another seizure. And that's when the vet was basically like, you need to start him on epilepsy medication. And I was trying to hold out. I was thinking in my head that I was going to wait until I saw the neurologist, which to get an appointment with them was months out. So I was like, I'm going to wait till I get my appointment. I want to know for sure it's epilepsy because I felt like giving my dog these medications that could hurt its liver and all this stuff was basically poison. Now, since going to the neurologist, I learned that Keppra is one of the least harmful ones on their liver. However, there's one that's even more gentle on their liver, and it's basically just a salt. But if your dog goes to the ocean, it could imbalance the salt and it could have epilepsy seizures. They didn't want me to make a switch from one medication to the next. They were like, you're on Keppra and it's working, just stay on that. And I was like, okay. So we stayed on the Keppra. The neurologist was like, it's epilepsy. He doesn't have a brain tumor. He'd be dead by now. He's also so young. Like, it's epilepsy. Now, since starting medication, Koi has only had one seizure, and that seizure happened after he chipped his tooth on my ski boots. So obviously the teeth are related to the brain. There's a chance that seizure just happened because of the trauma to the tooth. He did get it filled with pulp therapy, so basically like a cavity for dogs. We haven't had any issues since. So before starting medication, Koi most likely had 4 seizures. And I was told that you want to start medication as quickly as possible because the pathways in the brain, the more often they have seizures, those pathways get solidified and it becomes easier and easier for them to have seizures. Now, I've heard stories of people taking their dogs off of medication when they're like 7 or 8 years old and they don't have any seizures the rest of their life. That could be because they started medication early enough, those pathways didn't get formed, and they kind of grew out of the epilepsy. I'm not a doctor. I do not recommend taking your dogs off medication. I have actually thought about taking Koi off the medication and trying to see how he does, but because he did just have one within the last 6 months, I'm not going to take him off. I want him to go a full solid 2 years without any seizures before I take him off. And when your dog has a seizure, it's terrifying. I am equipped with emergency medication that I have to administer through his nose if he has one that lasts more than 60 seconds. I hope I never have to administer that. I have to buy it every year because it only lasts for about a year. It's just scary to have to think about doing that. Things I've learned: when he does have a seizure, I put a pressure on his nose and press up and in really hard. I've only had to do that twice because he hasn't had that many seizures. But he did, after about 10 seconds of that pressure, come out of the seizure. It's supposed to help them come out of it, that pressure. If your dog's having seizures, you want to make sure that you get that emergency medication from your vet that you administer through shooting it up their nose. It's like a liquid. They might give it to you in plastic bottles. I'm told that's not good. You want it in glass. I have both on hand, and it is a light sensitive medication. So you have to be really careful about that. So things that we've done around the house: eliminating all toxins. And I know that that sounds like a big ordeal. We were already pretty healthy, but I use vinegar to clean everything. Vinegar to clean my floors, vinegar to clean my countertops. Vinegar is all I use. Vinegar and sometimes an essential oil. That's all I use for a cleaner. Sometimes baking soda. Laundry detergent I make myself, so he's not getting any toxins off of my laundry. I make my own laundry detergent with borax, Epsom salt, pink salt, and baking soda. If I get a stain on something, I just use a little bit of hydrogen peroxide to get the stain out. If my clothes get stained, I don't really care usually, so it's not a big deal. And then all of our beds are made out of natural ingredients. Koi's beds are organic fibers only, whether it's organic cotton or organic wool. All of his beds that he has are organic. The only bed he has that has synthetic materials is his elevated bed, and in the summer he needs that bed, and he loves that bed. In the winter, I'll put an organic sheet over it because he still does like to lay in it in the winter. But the beds that are in the cars, the ones, even like our human beds, are made out of all organic, natural materials. My human bed is made of like copper springs and wool and horsehair and like cotton. So there's no synthetics in the house. If you would just give us a follow and subscribe, that would mean the world to us, so we can keep making more in-depth videos like this. Next thing is we cut out all rosemary from his diet. Rosemary extract is super common in as a preservative for human food and for dog food. A lot of treats have rosemary extract in them. We started giving single ingredient treats most of the time, things like bully sticks, yak chews, marrow bones, little minnows, chicken strips. Just looking at the ingredients, things with 1 to 3 ingredients, that's what we like in this house. We're making sure there's no rosemary oil in it. The other thing we started doing, and you might think I'm crazy, but I started distilling all of the water in our house. I think the one that I had was like $700, and it does a really big jug at a time. And it takes like 3 hours to distill this amount of water. And I will then add in healthy drops, healthy minerals to his water. So he's drinking probably better water than most Americans. When we go on trips, I take that water with me. So I'm bringing water with me when we go. He does drink out of rivers and streams and stuff like that, but I do my best to make sure that he has access to like the healthiest water possible. Another thing we do around the house is we have essential oil diffusers, and we put frankincense essential oil in them. Frankincense has been studied in humans to help reduce epilepsy, and since the medication he is on, Keppra, is also a human medication, why wouldn't having something that works for humans for your dog make sense? We use frankincense essential oils in our diffuser, and we're also very careful about what other oils we put in there. So no lemongrass, even though I love the smell of lemongrass, it's not good for dogs. Frankincense is really all we use. We don't use candles in the house. We have air purifiers in multiple bedrooms. So we're really conscious about keeping the air clean, having frankincense around because it's good for your brain. Going back to detoxifying the house, I've also detoxified things I put on my body. So I made a video a while ago about making your own organic body care for your skin that is pet safe. So it's basically just shea butter, coconut oil, and olive oil. Those are pet safe body butters and oils. And then adding essential oils that are also pet safe into that. So you can do your own research and make it at home. It's super simple. It's not hard. Or you can buy a brand that already makes pet safe body balm and use that. But you want to be careful with lotions, even like face creams and stuff. Like if I use certain creams, I don't let Koi lick my face. I make sure to wash my hands. If I'm using something I make at home, then I know it's pet safe, so he can like lick my knees or my legs and I don't have to worry about it triggering a seizure. The biggest thing that we've done, we went from like the healthiest kibble you could find to feeding raw, which didn't really work, and then we transitioned to just home cooking, which is honestly cheaper than feeding raw, and you have way more quality control over everything that you're feeding them. So the home cooking. What we feed right now is ground beef with a bunch of veggies and flax seeds and hemp seeds, salmon oil, and we have all sorts of fancy toppers like some mushroom toppers, some probiotics. Sometimes we put goat's milk on there. Some of the veggies we use are like kale, broccoli, red peppers. Sometimes we put a little garlic on there, especially if we're going to Wisconsin. It just helps keep ticks away. You don't want to put a lot of garlic in, but just a little bit, 2 cloves maybe. Oh, and then we top it off with a raw egg, and we just throw whatever in there. I usually make 3 or 4 days of food at a time. If we can get our hands on organ meat, we'll try to throw that in, but that's not always available to us. Come up here if you're gonna be a baby. So he's eating really healthy, and a lot of people are like, there's no way I can afford to feed him at home. If you have a Costco membership, you definitely can. It's pretty affordable, getting the ground beef in bulk, eating the veggies in bulk. Everything he eats is organic. I know not everyone's gonna do that, but that's just like a choice we've made. And we do get a lot of our meat from wild pastures. He's eating a super clean diet, and he's only eating once a day. So they found with humans that fasting and eating a more keto diet reduced the chance of seizures in epileptic patients. So while I don't know exactly how to make a dog's diet totally 100% keto and measure the ketones and all that, he's pretty much just like paleo, maybe besides the flax seeds. I don't know, are flax seeds paleo? Whatever. But the flax seeds are for the fiber, so he's His poops are gorgeous, even though he's eating a slightly different variation of the mixture and different veggies. I put carrots and sweet potatoes and pumpkin in there sometimes, but it's always a little different from week to week. His poops are always solid. He never has diarrhea. And when he was on raw food, it was always kind of a little iffy. And even things like fresh food companies, there's always a chance that some truck sits in the heat for 90 degrees and it shows up to your house a little lukewarm, and it's like, should this be okay? Like, they got a tough stomach. But you hear those horror stories of dogs getting sick, and I'm sure it's still really good for most people to use those services. But if you can find a little bit of time, an hour out of every week to just meal prep your dog's food, it's amazing. And it's not that expensive. Luckily, my mom got me a food processor for Christmas, and that makes it so much easier. My dog will not eat chunks of carrots. Everything has to be ground up to a fine and mixed in with the beef juices and the pumpkin and the sweet potato. It's all got to be mixed up in there really good. But those are the things that I think have most likely made the biggest difference, is becoming a non-toxic household, distilling his water and adding good minerals back into it, the essential oil diffuser with the frankincense, and eating a clean diet and only eating once a day. So he gets fed dinner and that's it. And he knows when dinner time is. He gets excited. Before I started home feeding for him, he didn't really care about dinner. I would have his food out all day and he was indifferent about it. He didn't really care if he ate it or not. And I think lightly cooking it just helps make sure that there's no impurities or bacteria in the ground beef. So we cook it. A lot of people still want to do raw, which totally up to you. But yeah, those 4 things. And then of course, being on the medication, I think is what's really helped us deal with the epilepsy. Considering in the last 2 years since he's been diagnosed, he's only had 1 breakthrough seizure. I think that's pretty good. And I know there's a lot of pet parents out there that are not going to be that lucky, that might do all of these things and it's just not enough. But if your dog has been diagnosed with epilepsy, I highly suggest just doing some research, and do some research on what's worked for humans. Because if they're giving our dogs Kepra's a human medication, if they're giving that to our dogs, why not do some other things that worked for humans? Try to get your dog on a keto diet. Take out all the corn, take out all the processed food. Boy doesn't get processed food. The most processed thing he eats is when he sneaks a little bite of pizza crust from me. Otherwise, he is eating a cleaner diet than probably 90% of the dogs in America. And then feeding once a day, I think that's just helped him also be a better dog. He's super calm and chill, and when it's dinner time, it's dinner time. If you are struggling with a dog that has epilepsy, I'd love to hear what you've done, how it's going, what's worked, what hasn't worked. I know a lot of people might be in the comments talking about CBD or MCT oil from coconut oil. We don't do either of them, again, just because of the mixed studies that show sometimes it actually will make things worse in dogs. But Koi does get just some normal coconut oil in his food a few times a week, and we have to use a Paul balm, it's usually just coconut oil because it's pet safe. So we aren't anti-coconut oil at all. We just don't do the MCT oil, and we don't really do CBD. I really hope this video can at least help at least one dog parent that is dealing with this. I know when I first got the diagnosis, I would have killed to watch a video that was kind of more clear like this. And I felt like I watched thousands of videos and none of them were just someone saying what they're doing and if it's working. And I truly believe that these things are working for us. And I think the biggest thing you can do is detoxify your house. And that's the hardest one. Getting a water filter, easy. Changing your dog's food, pretty easy. Getting an essential oil diffuser with frankincense in it, pretty easy. Detoxifying your house, that is a lifestyle change. But I think it's one that's worth it. And if you did like this video, please subscribe. It'll mean the world to us and it'll help us keep making videos like this.